I just got an interview. So I just joined and have been looking through some of the resources. And I know I listened to a couple of mock interviews, and Stephanie was saying that that was very helpful. Do you have any other advice on preparing? Because I am about to go next week. So not much time. Yes.
Okay, well, first, congratulations. That's an exciting and obviously, like you said, nerve-wracking, right?
Yes.
So I think my first question to you would be this. Where do you feel, like, do you know what kind of interview style you're up against? Do you have any idea or insights on what your interview style is going to be?
I've heard it's more of a get to know you kind of style.
Okay, so probably a lot of emotional intelligence. I would then assess where you feel like you have your strengths and your weaknesses, whether that be professionally, clinically, and also just self-awareness, since there's a lot of get to know you, and also assessing why you chose this program, because they're probably going to ask you questions around that.
Okay. And have you known many people that have commuted? Like, I plan on living there, but my family won't necessarily go with me. So more like weekends and things like that. I believe clinicals would be here, but the didactic portion would be there. So
yes,
thoughts on that?
Many students do end up commuting, and you have to be creative to find unique ways. I think there's some who find programs that are somewhat hybrid, so they can maybe have some more time at home for online didactic portions. But if that's not the case, like you said, you'll have to get creative and kind of block the times that you plan on going home to spend time with family. I think that there's, where there's a will, there's a way, right? And not that everyone's experience is going to be different. Now granted, I did my schooling in the same state, but for the first almost year of the program, I traveled 4 hours, 4 hours, and it's like 4.5 hours just to commute to a 10-hour class. So there were like 15-hour days, and that was almost every day. Some of my classmates back in the day would get long-term hotels to stay at. I luckily was able to have family in town, so I shacked up with my parents again after being an adult for a while, and got to live there during those long commute sessions and things of that nature. But many classmates would bunker up with a classmate and get long-term hotels to kind of get through some of that. Or now there's Airbnb and different options. But really seeing if you do get into this program, trying to find someone within the same potential area that maybe you could either carpool back, or if I don't know how close your home is, if it's even drivable, if it's a flight.
It's very much drivable. It's 2.5 hours. It's not far.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. Yeah, so that would be, because I utilize carpooling a lot of classmates who either were on the way, or like we would make a mid-stop that had a Taco Bell and a gas station that was really nice, and like meet up with classmates there and leave that car parked in the parking lot and drive the rest of the way. There's some unique things you can do once you kind of figure that portion out. But yeah, 100% that's completely doable. As far as your other question of interview practice, it sounds like you hitting the mock interview library. Sounds like, I know there's a lot of content, and this with a short time frame, I want to make sure your time is spent as best as possible. Since the emotional intelligence is probably where they're going to lean into, I would focus on our emotional intelligence pathway and hitting that area of the academy. It has its own section. It's a micro credential as well. So that would be where I would put my focus, is there. Also, let me give you another resource in case you haven't already found it. It's our EI. It's underneath the downloadable resources, but it's our EI kind of question and answer study guide, as you would call it. It kind of just gives you guided ideas on why they're asking a question, what they're looking for, and kind of ideas on how to potentially answer it. Obviously, tailoring it to you as an individual and making it personalize it. I think the big thing is assessing, your strengths and weaknesses, especially when it comes to communication. If you're doing this in person, assessing how you present your body language. They say you make an impression in the first 10 to 15 seconds of meeting somebody. So whenever I hear that, I'm always like, that first 10, 15 seconds when you walk in that room is so critical. So little things like that, even though it seems silly, little things like that go a long way. Our 5-day interview bootcamp challenge, even though there's a lot of things in there that are clinically based, it could be a nice refresher before your day. I do go into body language and some soft skills, as you will call it, in that course as well. So that's another, and that's underneath it's in its own separate section that you should have access to as a CSBA student, is the 5-day interview challenge course. So hopefully between the emotional intelligence pathway courses, this guide, and then potentially the 5-day interview prep course, you should, in the next handful of days that you have, hopefully that's going to beef up your robust interview prep. And then if you haven't already done a mock interview, you might still have time to fit one in. CRN is a really great place to go, or you might be able to find someone here in the community who'd be willing to do a swap with you, like a peer-to-peer swap.
I did get onto TeachRN, and I saw that was part of your program. So that's all very helpful. And I plan on using, I've looked at some of them and it's been very helpful, but it's so much, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, it is a lot. And I know, unfortunately, when people kind of come to us kind of more towards the tail end of their preparation, I do think it's kind of like smacked in the face with, this is a lot. And that's why part of the reasons why we tried to consolidate and categorize things more specifically, so it wasn't so overwhelming. But yeah, I think when you have such a short timeline like this, and I say when you're watching the mock interviews, don't just watch them passively and only maybe pick 4 or 5. I mean, there's so many in there. I know, you're like, oh, there's like 20 some in here. Like, oh, that's 20 some hours. That's a lot of hours to spend watching mock interviews. So by all means, you're not going to get through them all. I would probably aim to do 4 or 5 at the most and make them active, meaning what did you like about the response or how they answered a question? What did you not like? And how would you answer that question? If you take that approach, you're going to get a lot more value from reviewing those mock interview replays than if you were just to kind of watch them or listen passively.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Best of luck. Keep us posted and definitely rooting for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I don't know, someone else earlier, and I apologize, I didn't actually see the little green thing highlight. Did someone else have a question too that I think 2 people went live at the same time formerly? So if you're still on, unfortunately, I didn't glimpse who it was. Yes.
Hi, I have a question regarding the application. Currently, I have a 2+ year experience in medical ICU, CCRN. My science GPA was 3.1, but I took advanced classes, general chem, OChem, and physics, and got A in all of them. My deadline for application is coming July 31st, and I am right now studying for the CMC. My question is, should I ask for the reference letter right now? Should I wait for my CMC to be done so that I can add that into my application too?
The reference letter from whoever you need, like a reference as far as for your application?
Yeah, because then they can mention that I have a CMC belongs with the CCRN, or should I just apply?
I think you should just get the reference, because I don't know if they're going to have once you get the CMC, you're going to have that on your application. You can submit that documentation. The reference letter is less about them regurgitating your quote unquote qualifications, such as CCRN, CMC. No, don't get me wrong. They can say, they have proven their clinical aptitude because they have their CCRN and things like that. But reference is more going to be what their experience is like working with you and why they feel you're a good fit to advance your degree in this realm. So I wouldn't worry about needing your CMC to get a good reference, because they're going to really be going based on your team dynamics with you in the workplace. So that's, yeah. And you can always give them your resume and let them know, like, just, I'm going to be taking the CMC later this month. You won't have the results until later, but I would not wait, because unfortunately, if you wait and then whoever you ask isn't the most prompt at getting that reference, it could really hose your entire application. So I would ask as soon as you possibly can and have a backup plan, because you kind of are cutting it down to the wire. If you ever need references, I always advise at least, if you can give a 2 months notice, I think that's always best, but at least a month notice, because again, some people take weeks or 2 weeks. Some people just forget. And then it's just back and forth. And then you don't want to missing your application deadline all because of a reference. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Rooting for you. Best of luck. I hope you, just like I said, sounds like you've done a lot and you're doing a lot. So congrats, and I'm proud of you for that. And keep your chin up and keep going. And yeah, I would just go ahead and get that reference out of the way. Let's see a question here in the chat from Grace. Yeah, you're welcome, Grace. I appreciate you. Okay, on NursingCAS, do you recommend filling out the achievements or experiences section? I already have these things on my resume, so I wasn't sure. I would, because it does ask you on NursingCAS. I understand what you're kind of saying. It's kind of redundant. But because NursingCAS has that section for you, it's hard to know exactly who's reviewing the NursingCAS on the academic side, meaning the admissions committee side. And if you were to leave a section blank that is naturally there on NursingCAS for you to fill out, I would worry. I don't know. I just would worry, like human nature. They might be like, oh, that's weird. They don't have anything, even though you have it on your resume. So I would lean into just filling it out like you have on your resume, since it's prompting you to do so on NursingCAS, just for the sheer chance that what if whoever's reviewing it on the admissions committee side only does NursingCAS and doesn't take the time to look at your physical paper at the time they're reviewing NursingCAS. Let me know if that makes sense.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Should I put the same thing that I have on my resume?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, does it give you like a word length or anything like that?
Ooh, I would have to look back.
Okay. If it gives you space, I personally would embellish just a little bit. You don't need to go into like paragraphs on your achievements or experiences. But the beauty of this is on your resume, you typically don't have a lot of space to do a whole lot of any explanation. I always encourage some explanation, some type of descriptor of some kind. But now here, if you got an award or you've done something that you've been recognized or you've achieved, you can now maybe go into a little bit more of an embellish on it a little bit so they have a better understanding of that award or of that accomplishment. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. But yeah, they're going to give you the space, take it up. And I'll never forget, this was years ago now, and he's a CRNA now. It's funny. It's like it's been full circle where now there's full-fledged CRNAs in the workforce who were CSBA members back in 2020. With that being said, I'll never forget, I did this mock interview with one of our students and I reviewed his resume before the mock interview. And during the interview, I was just blown away by all of his leadership experience. And, you know, he's part of all these teams and took initiatives. And I just remember asking, like, I didn't gather any of this from reading your resume. And he didn't embellish upon, he had like real basic bullet points on his resume. And it just did not do him justice on all the things that he was actively doing for leadership. So I was like, this is definitely a learning point where you need to make sure that is known. And it's hard to do again on a resume, but I think sometimes, unfortunately, resumes don't do you justice because it doesn't give you the space to really go into enough detail. All right. Any more questions? And if not, I know a lot of you already kind of asked questions about CSBA and some of you are already CSBA members, which is great. I love to see you here. But I'll just kind of, for the replay purposes too, I'll just kind of go into a little bit more detail. Go ahead.
Sorry, I did have a question. And sorry, my name is Dana.
Hi, Dana.
If this is too like specific to me, please stop me and I can definitely have like a separate coaching call. But just like a quick summary about me. I've been a nurse for like 4 years now. I work at a level 1 trauma center. I've worked MICU. I've worked cardiac surgery. I worked ICU float. I have devices. I have charge. I have mentor precepting. I have my CCR. I have been applying to CRNA school for a couple years now, and I have gotten 2 interviews, 1 waitlist, and then the rest have been denials. I think part of this is my science GPA is definitely on the lower end. I had like a lot of life factors in nursing school and undergrad, and I have since retaken classes. I've taken biochem, I've taken general chem, I've taken transition to nurse anesthesiology at Barry, I've taken, a couple other things. I took an advanced pharmacology class. I've gotten A's and B's in all of those kind of in an effort to prove that I am a good student. I think my barrier is like I've been having a very hard time getting interviews, and I guess I'm trying to figure out how I can help these schools not overlook my GPA, but obviously like look at me a little bit more holistically because I do have a lot of leadership and skills. I have shadowing hours. So I just kind of like need to figure out how to get my foot in the door to actually get an interview. I'm part of the 6-month intensive, and I've started reading over and looking through like the 5-day interview prep just to kind of like be ahead of that because I have started applying again for like this year's cycles. And I'm waiting to hear back, but I just am kind of like stuck in this spot of trying to like get through to them, I guess. And like I said, I've retaken a lot of classes. I have my CCRN. So I just like, I'm feeling a little bit stuck and definitely discouraged, but just trying to like figure out how to get over the hump.
Yeah, no, I 100%. So do you happen to know exactly what your science GPA is? Have you done with your courses that you've taken now?
So yes and no. I think it kind of depends because certain programs that I'm in, like if you have retaken a course, it will cancel out the lower one. So for some schools, my science GPA is like a 3.3. For other schools, it's like a 2.8. So it's like really hard to actually know. And some schools that I thought my GPA was going to be too low for, I did get an interview for, and kind of like vice versa. So I did use your GPA calculator, which gave me, unfortunately, a lower GPA than I wanted. But I'm also kind of at a place where I am willing to take more classes. I just, like, obviously, when you take a class, it doesn't really change your GPA that much. Even getting an A kind of brings it up like 0.1. And now I've taken so many, like I've taken biochem, I've taken chemistry. Really, the only thing I haven't taken is like organic chemistry and physics, which I guess I would be willing to, but I'm kind of running out of classes to take.
Yeah, you mentioned advanced pharm. Did you know what you got? What grade you got in that course?
I got an A.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so, even classes like Introduction to Anesthesia, are you applying to Barry? Is that one of the schools you're applying to?
I didn't apply in the past, but I would be willing to. I live in Virginia, so if possible, I was like kind of trying to stay local. If I could, I'm willing to move, but I think a lot of schools in Virginia, like VCU, are obviously very popular, so there's like a huge applicant pool, so I just get like lost in the sauce with my lower stats, and then,
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree that maybe it's time to, I mean, I'm glad you found schools that omit and take the higher grade, because 100%, that's where I would probably lean into those schools the most, because that is where you're going to have the best odds at getting an interview. And also schools that look at the last 60 credit hours. So those are going to be the two really kind of distinguishing factors when you're really picking the schools to apply to that will give you the best odds of acceptance in an interview, are the ones who look at the last 60 credit hours, as well as the ones who take the higher grade if you were to retake a course. That's going to help you a ton, especially because, like you said, taking a course at this point is not going to boost you by a whole lot. I'm glad to hear that with some schools, your science GPA is up to 3.3. That's great. Even the 2.8, I mean, again, if they're going to look at your last 60 credit hours, it might also come out differently if they really consider the sciences you've recently taken. By getting A's in those classes, you're definitely showing them that you're academically ready. The only thing, and it depends on where you got the B's. If you are still getting B's, and not that B's are bad grades, I'm not saying that, but just in the realm of trying to boost your GPA, a B is not going to be able to do that. It's just a 3.0 to a 3.3 actually could lower your overall GPA. So really the only way to get a boost in your GPA is to get an A. And so that's the only thing kind of just to point out. That's the unfortunate part about taking courses. While it's great, but if you get a B or B plus, you're really not going to move the needle for you and you're in the GPA realm. But that being said, I think at this point, figuring out what schools are going to look at the last 60 credit hours or omit the lower grades if you retake the course. And then from there, seeking counsel from them specifically on, would it be worth my time and energy to take physics or to take organic chemistry? I don't know if you have advanced pathophysiology under your belt or advanced graduate statistics, but those could be two additional. The reason why I'm asking about graduate level courses versus physics or OChem, and those are great courses, but they're typically done in undergrad, which is fine. But when you're talking about boosting your science GPA, the advanced courses are worth 5 credit hours are going to give you that little extra oomph, to boost your GPA than just a 3 credit hour or 4 credit hour course would. So just something to consider if you were to take more courses, to lean into maybe the higher weighted course. So it would do give you a little more of a boost. And then the next thing is, you were waitlisted, so that is an acceptance. So you are so close, which I understand is a really frustrating place to be. You're like, oh gosh, I literally got to the door and then they just closed it on me right before I got through it. But that is a very positive signal that you've done a lot of things right despite you facing rejection. So I want you to hold your head high and keep your chin up, because you are so close. And, you're right by just kind of keep pushing on and taking courses to really address that elephant in the room. It's your science GPA most likely. And have you gotten any feedback directly from the programs that you have been rejected from?
Yes, I have. I went to, so one of the schools that I was waitlisted at was actually 2 years ago. I interviewed and got waitlisted, and then I did a Zoom meeting with one of the program directors, and he gave me some feedback on things to improve, which he said, improve your personal statement a little bit, polish up your resume a little bit, and then, retake some classes. So I did all of those things. And then unfortunately, I didn't get an interview the following year. And when I spoke with him about that, he said, yeah, no, that was just like the pool that you were in. You ended up on the lower end, which I know can happen. Another program that I've applied to a couple times, I have met with them a couple of times. And then recently this year, I actually went in person, did like a tour, and brought pretty much my application printed out to them and sat and was like, show me what I need to improve, what classes I should take, like, et cetera. That was the school most recently that I got an interview for. I got a first round interview, and I unfortunately did not get a second round interview. So I've just been kind of getting like mixed messages, I guess, because I am doing the things that they are telling me to do, and it's not really working out.
But it is making you stronger for all the rest of the schools that are still open to considering your application. Even though I know it's like, I'm doing everything they're telling me to do and it's not working, but you are still in the meantime, because you're taking their advice, you're actually building strength to keep going forward for other schools. Right. So I wouldn't look at it as a complete waste, because if it's going to be good for this school, it's going to be good for that school, meaning taking all these extra courses, bolstering your leadership skills and all the things you're doing is overall still going to help you keep moving forward. So it's not wasted effort, even though it does feel like that when it's not paying off, in the interim. But know that it's going to pay off. It's just a matter of, again, kind of doing what you're currently doing and just you're getting interviews, and that's great. And you might not always get interviews, but the fact that you're taking initiative to talk to these schools, to go to the open houses, I don't know how things are in your timeline. You said you're actively applying, but if you ever, go to, I don't know what state, you said you're in Virginia, but you're open to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. I would probably hone in, again, the schools that are going to consider the last 60 credit hours and omit and take the higher grade, and really put a lot of effort into getting to know those programs as best you can, whether that's going to state association meetings, wherever they may be located, and getting involved in like that local landscape of CRNAs, and maybe even asking if you could sit in on on a class one time or a simulation lab experience, so you can get. So, and sometimes they'll allow, you know, nurses to do that, where they'll allow them to kind of have like almost like a shadow day of being in class. Those are all really good ways to really pour into those schools who you know are going to give you more leverage with your GPA for the effort you've done.
Sure.
So that would definitely be where I would lean into, you know. And as far as the interview goes, this is where I'd also kind of question you. If you're getting interviews, my next question, how do you feel like the interviews are going?
So my first one, also, sorry, everybody, I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I'm not trying to monopolize this at all. So I apologize sharing my life story on here. So my first one was a couple years ago that I was waitlisted for, and I was definitely very nervous and I didn't know what to expect. And kind of afterwards, I was like a little surprised I got waitlisted, because I was like, ooh, I wasn't really prepared. I was definitely very nervous and I could have done better. So kind of waitlisting was like a lucky shot for me. This past year that I got my first round interview, I was really disappointed because I thought I did really well on it. And unfortunately, the school that it was for, I have spoken with them in the past to get feedback. And this year, as part of their like denial interview or email, they said that they don't really have the resources for that, which is unfortunate, because they said they could send like a, I guess, feedback guide, which I assume is probably what is on their website on what to do to apply. But I really want feedback on my interview, because that's obviously where I fell short. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that. So I've been, like I said, trying to do the 5-day interview prep and like preparing for all those things early. But I will say I did do the CASPER exam for a program that I applied to, and I did very well on that, which I think definitely works in my favor, but not all schools require it or accept it. So I'm just kind of trying to, like, I guess, bolster the rest of my resume to pad my science GPA.
Yeah, I think you're doing the right thing by kind of leaning into your interview and continue to practice that. See if you can have find a peer-to-peer swap here in the community, as well as if you haven't leveraged someone on Teacher Ends, another option if you can't find someone in the community. But more than likely, you can find someone in the community to just swap questions with, you know, and utilize the resources and interview guides that inside CSBA touch on the emotional intelligence pathway, like I kind of spoke to earlier. I think that's where a lot of gold could lie, you know. And you probably already did this, but on your personal statement, you can always address your strength and your growth that you've as your GPA. You don't have to dwell on it or go into a lot of detail, but if you haven't, I would encourage you to mention it in your personal statement. And that way it's kind of like addressing the elephant in the room scenario.
Right.
Stuff like that may help, is what you probably already are doing, stuff like that, but just in case. But yeah, and just keeping your chin up and expanding your reach and applying to more schools. Before you take any more courses, though, I would, again, try to connect with these programs who, you know, omit lower grades or look at the last 60 credit hours, and try to find those programs and then ask them if, or maybe even taking the GRE would suffice. Sometimes taking the GRE for lower GPAs, sometimes that's enough, where you don't have to take an extra course, but maybe you have to take the GRE to kind of bolster your application.
Yeah. So I took the GRE and I did okay on it. I was planning to retake it just because I think I can do better. And then I guess kind of like a side note, sorry, everyone, but I took my CCRN like when I literally was 1 year out of being a nurse, which in hindsight, I shouldn't have done. I just kind of was curious to see how I would do on it. And I passed, but I didn't do very well on it. So now I'm kind of getting kicked because all these schools want my score report. And unfortunately, I reached out to AACN and you can't retake it unless you're up for renewal. And unfortunately, now they renew it for like 3 years at a time. So I've already renewed it before I even knew. And now I can't renew it till 28. So I'm also submitting like a low CCRN score, but I'm also like, guys, please note that I was 1 year out of nurse. Like I was a 1 year nurse. I pretty much knew nothing. I shouldn't have even taken it. I can do a lot better now, but unfortunately I can't do better because they won't let me retake it.
Yeah. What was your GRE score? Do you know? Was it over 300?
I think it was like 299.
Okay. 299. Got it. Okay.
So I definitely need to retake it, and I'm planning to retake it.
Yeah, a score of a 305, if you're able to, and I would focus a lot on the qualitative, the math and science portion of it, could really could help. And then let's just say maybe you got a 4.5 in your analytical writing for this pass. But maybe they'll take that even if you don't do as well the second time. So if you take it again, you can always say, hey, can you take my highest scores of these categories to make the composite score? They might be willing to do that for you as well. Just something to kind of think about, since if you really are going to retake that test, they might go to take the better scores of each one to give you that score you want. And as far as the CCRN, I know that stinks and there's nothing you can do about it. And but honestly, in the big scheme of things, you know, it's not like I wouldn't say that is something that's going to really completely hold you back. They do consider it, but it's not. And I think there's other things to prove your clinical knowledge, such as whether you're precepting and, I don't remember if you mentioned you were charging, but just what devices you're trained on, all those things really also play into your clinical readiness versus just the CCRN. And now I don't know if you have the time to do this because it probably would take a substantial amount of time because it is a lot. But inside of the academy we have that micro-credential course that is on pharmacology and pathophysiology. Having that, maybe that could also signal to them your clinical aptitude as well. You have to take post-assessment course requirements to pass that micro-credential. But the micro-credential you get, it's like a little certification that kind of outlines exactly what you did to receive it. So it could also show them your readiness that way. It's not going to be ready till this fall, so I probably putting my foot in my mouth to say anything about it. But we're also making a critical care certification micro-credential, and we're doing it for reasons like this, where maybe your CCRN score wasn't as strong, or maybe you're a really new nurse, but you want to still apply to CRNA school at like 9 months in, but you can't take your CCRN. So we're outlining it. It's going to be a very heavy course with like over 80 lessons and probably a 5-hour, but it's all on audio with a massive test, the 125 question test at the end to simulate the CCRN. So that way, there could be a way to show the schools you have the clinical knowledge outside of taking a regimented test that you can't just go retake. So anyways, that's coming. But again, I don't know if it's going to be ready in time for your application, but I wanted to at least share that. I think you're doing everything you can, but things to consider would be retaking your GRE and seeing if they can take the a combined score and give you like a composite score for the GRE, and otherwise preparing for your interview and making sure that if you get a chance to interview, that interview goes as good as it can. And since you mentioned you felt like you did bad and then you got on a wait list, you felt you did good and you didn't get in, to me that shows that there might be something that is like a blind spot. You know what I mean? Like something that is not easily foreseen to you because you're kind of sitting in the driver's seat, right? You're not in the passenger seat. You're not saying, what about, because you're grazing everywhere. Where if you're driving, you're like, I'm watching the road.
Right.
So that could be something to assess when you go on with your mock interviews is, do I have a blind spot? And I'll never forget, and I tell the story all the time because it was really eye-opening to me that you can be so close to yourself that you don't actually have the insight to kind of recognize what other people think, right, or interpret. I had a student who kept getting rejected and she didn't understand because she's like, I have better qualifications, better GPA, all the things. I'm better than my colleagues, and yet they're getting in and they're the goofballs of the ICU. And here I am, like I've been, she kept giving me all these reasons why she was the better candidate, but yet she wasn't selected. And when she finally got some feedback, they actually flat out told her they thought she seemed too arrogant. And I'm not saying this is what is going on with you, but I'm just saying she was like, no, me? I'm not arrogant. I can't believe you would think that about me. I was like, well, that's just really insightful because, that's how they interpreted however your tone was, however you came across when you answered questions, and they let in your colleagues and not you, all because they feared you not being teachable. Like that's kind of what that means. They fear you're not teachable, that you'd get defensive if someone were to critique you, right? And I'm not saying that's what happened, but it's just another example of sometimes, working on having other people kind of identify potential areas that you can improve upon in that way, and how you present yourself or how you communicate or how your body language, your tone of voice. And because it could be something little as that for your interview versus the actual knowledge piece. You might have the knowledge piece and it might just be, who's on the other end of that table.
Sure.
I also had a student, Chris, and he went on our podcast to share the story. He was super inspirational. Highly encouraged the episode. Chris Udell is who I'm talking about for the podcast. I think I did it back in January of this year. Anyways, he said, he went, I think it was like 2 interviews and got rejected. He was feeling really defeated, and he was part of our 12-month program. Went into the 3rd interview and he's like, I just kind of decided at that moment that, what do I have to lose? I just need to let go of all my anxiety around getting in because it's making me really wound up tight when I go in these interviews. And I know I'm not being myself. I know I'm just not being relaxed and I'm not conveying who I am because I can't communicate well. And I'm under that immense amount of pressure. I said, who cares how this outcome comes, whether I get in or I don't care. I'm going to go in, I'm going to be myself, and we'll see what happens. Well, they loved him and flat out offered him a spot. Like he got in, and he said it just was the difference of having that connection. The interview process is not really all about clinical knowledge. Sometimes it's about that human connection. Can they connect with you? Can they, really kind of feel that vibe of like, okay, this person's going to be okay. They're going to thrive in my program. And so it could just be that person to person touch, meaning maybe that interview just wasn't with the right group of interview panel committee members who kind of felt, you know what I mean? And so it could just be a simple thing where every year, maybe the interview panel changes. One year it wasn't your crew, the next year could be your crew. And I hate to say that because it seems really flawed, but the reality is interviews are not perfect. They are humans behind the seat, and they don't always make the best decision or the right decision, but they make the decision that's best that they possibly can. And so I guess what I want to say is don't take it personally. Big, long moral of the story. You got to keep going. You got to look for potential blind spots that maybe you can work on, whether that's delivery, whether that's clinical knowledge, or whether that's something that you're completely unaware of, by kind of gathering insights from others, and then just keep moving forward and seeking feedback. If you don't get it, then come to the office hours and try to talk to some of our faculty coaches and say, hey, what do you like? If someone came, like if this was a student that came in multiple years, one time they were waitlisted, other times they weren't given an opportunity to get in at all. What's some of the most common things you see keep them from getting accepted when it comes to the interview portion, and have them unravel that for you, whether that's have them talk about emotional intelligence and maybe clinical knowledge, have them maybe ask you a few potential interview questions and give you direct feedback. You can't use it as a full mock interview hour, but you can say, hey, can you ask me emotional intelligence questions and gauge my reply? That would really be helpful. Dr. Herman, Dr. Newman, and Dr. Ballister, Dr. Wilson would all be incredibly happy to do so.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your feedback. Sorry, everybody, for taking so much time, but hopefully I covered something that will help you too.
I'm sure you did. Thanks, Dana. I appreciate
Thank you so much.
Megan said, what's a good, bad CCRN score? So just in this past January, we did a faculty Q&A session, and they, on that particular session, they said they look for scores right around 100, which if you take in considerations, graded out of 125 is approximately an 80% is what they look for on the CCRN. Anyone else have any questions?
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Really a question.
Stephanie? Hi.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good.
I just want to say thank you so much.
Oh,
good. I got into my top choice.
Yay! Oh my gosh, Stephanie!
So
I'm gonna cry. This is amazing. This has been a long time in the making.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
It's been a long time. Yeah. Thank
Congrats.
you.
When did all this occur? I need to spill the beans.
Yeah. No. The mock library really helped me a lot, and I just want to encourage anyone who's out there that this program is really helpful, and it made a difference for me, because every time I did a mock interview with somebody, they said, oh, you did really good, you nailed it. And it was just watching those videos on the mock library. It helped me a lot. So
awesome. Oh, yay.
Thank you so much.
Stephanie, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. You had to overcome a lot too. So, and I know you worked tirelessly to do so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm so excited for you. Thank you for sharing the news. I appreciate you coming on and letting me know that. That just it makes my day, makes my week and month. And so thank you so much.